Amen. Hi, friends. Host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and the gentleman who will be providing some of the ideation today regarding the following topic: your shadow functions, your shadow self.
Dun dun dun. The shadow knows.
So each of us has, according to Jung MBTI, 4 conscious stack functions, quote unquote, and 4 unconscious stack functions, quote unquote. The unconscious ones being your shadow functions.
Dun dun dun.
Now, the thing to note about that is the reason they're called shadow functions is because they are the opposite of the one that's conscious, and they're somehow less real or more shadowy than are the conscious functions. So what I was thinking the other day is basically the best way to think about slot mechanics for shadow functions is to think about it as the unconscious version of the conscious one. So if you just say to yourself, okay, well, my first slot is my nature, then my 5th slot is my unconscious nature. That's, say, my ignoring function, the part of my nature that I am not conscious of, that I ignore. Okay? And then in my 2nd slot is my tool function, that which I prefer to use. Then my the reverse of that is the shadow function is the unconscious tool, which is to say the one I don't prefer to use. I prefer not to use because it's something that I prefer to be unconscious, that I not have to actually actively engage it. And that's why my 6th slot function is countervalued. And then in the 3rd slot, my aspirational function, the unconscious aspiration is that which I don't understand at all. Because while it's possible to ignore aspects of your nature that are fundamental to you, and while it's possible to countervalue aspects of your doing that interfere with the one you're most comfortable with, it's not possible to even know that which you cannot aspire to. So it makes sense then that the unconscious version of aspiration is blindness. And then in the last slot, you've got on the front stack your weakness, and on the back stack your unconscious weakness, which is your insecurity. So what I know I'm weak at, I'm not necessarily insecure about. What I am sort of unconscious about being weak about is what I'm insecure about. And the larger takeaway from all of this is that the study of cognitive functions and typing and typology and all that stuff is how you escape from your type. It's how you become free of the restrictions of your type. It does not make you more like a type or more likely to excuse things because you see what type you are or something like that, or all the various criticisms that people have of it. It makes you more free from your type. And one thing that drives this home for me is that I talked to an ESTJ last night who knew nothing about cognitive function, knew nothing about type, and he was the most stereotypical example of his reflexive valuings that have not been metacognated about at all that I've ever seen. So if you want to be as stereotypical as possible, as much of a stereotype of your type as possible, then know as little as possible about typology, and you'll be most like your type. People have that exactly backwards. They think somehow you're creating yourself as a type by understanding what functions are, but instead, by understanding what functions are, you are liberating yourself from your reflexes. You are liberating yourself from autopilot. You are enabling your own free will, and thus moving further and further away from your type the more you understand cognitive functions into a unique individual human being that is not an expression of a reflexive set of values attained by a configuration of attentional mechanics, but instead as an expression of free will and of choice and of human understanding and decision making. So to become a moral agent is to understand one's own attention in some manner beyond experiential.
Yeah, but ISTJ has FI, which means he would found his own people, and other people would be more likely to get into the socionics and personality theories.
Okay, so
because of what you said.
So, you know, from a mechanical perspective, I point out that you just advocated again for a utility-based framework, and that understanding cognitive functions allows you to assess your own framework when you're making statements like that, to understand why it is that your perspective is what it is. So I understand why it is that I prioritize a certain amount of intellectualism sometimes over use to others, and that I validate things that are not necessarily useful just because they are consistent. And so on that level, I understand that I'm limited in my perspectives by my reflexive, configuration driven approach to manifesting a reality and existence. Because remember, we tend to talk a lot about reality existing outside of us, but we can't point to any single aspect of reality that we know in any meaningful sense at all that is not actually part of us. In other words, there is no non experiential reality. And I guess that's why they call it the blues. So yeah, the thing is, it's possible to use something like Socionics or whatever else through a utility framework that says we need to have a clear model or heuristic that we can apply to a given situation, a given people, in order to have a particular purpose for our ideation. But my point is that the ideation itself is to liberate our own selves from always expressing that which we reflexively value because of our configuration into a world in which we can make choices to behave differently than we're naturally configured to behave, because these circumstances make it a more appropriate manner of attention to use. There are some times when the most appropriate manner of attention for me to use is introverted feelings. When the most appropriate manner of attention for me to use is not to say, okay, well, let's be fair and disinterested about this, but to prioritize my own or Kimberly's, for example, subjective, personal, unfair interest. There are times when it's appropriate for me to prioritize that. And I need to be able to recognize that my default approach with TI, going like, here's the logical thing to do about it. No, I'm right because blah blah blah. That this is not one of those circumstances where logic ought to be used to determine the legitimacy of a thing or to make a decision. But it's obviously difficult for anyone to choose uncomfortable manners of attention as a means of solving a situation. It's impossible if they aren't aware that that they're choosing to embrace their nature rather than allow themselves to have alternate choices as well as their most natural one. Waits McGee, you got any thoughts on all that rigmarole there?
You're so right, Eric. I've been
Thanks,
listening
Waits.
the whole time.
That's true. I am so right about it. And you're so wise in your assessment of my rightness.
Mm-hmm. It's because I'm more right.
So the topic of this live stream, though, is shadow functions, and your shadow functions, your shadow self. So then my shadow self then is a self that ignores what's the right way to do things, that dislikes being effective or efficient, that has no idea what he wants or likes or doesn't like, and that feels really insecure about doing anything. That's my shadow self. It's like the bad self of your type. So for Kimberly, for example, her bad self would be she ignores the fact that she can do shit. She doesn't like the fact that she has a preference one way or another how shit goes, that she likes things or doesn't like things. She doesn't like that fact. She's completely blind to how to do things effectively, and she's insecure about what the single right way to do it is. That's her shadow self. And then Jen's shadow self over there, she's an ESFJ. Her shadow self is she ignores what she actually likes or doesn't like or value because that doesn't matter to her. And she countervalues the taking of action or following through on plans, even though she knows it's necessary to do that. And then she's completely blind to the single right path. She can think of different possible paths, but she's completely blind to the fact that one of those paths might be correct. And then in the last slot, she would be insecure about doing things efficiently. Yeah, like what I mean by insecure about it is it's an area where you really don't want to be criticized.
Oh, hell no. Yeah.
And you'll get defensive about it.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, yeah, I'll go up.
And what I will blow up on you about is follow through. I don't like being criticized on my follow through. I don't like being criticized on executing shit in the real world. I like to be able to just keep talking about ideas forever. Well, Eric, you ever going to do anything about that? Shut the fuck up. I'm thinking still.
God works in his own time.
Yeah. So. Okay, good. So yeah, that's your shadow self. Now, Waze McGee's shadow self is the same as mine, which is to say, he ignores the single right way. He doesn't like the fact that he has to do it efficiently. He has no idea what he likes or doesn't like, and he's insecure about doing it.
Okay.
Modestus, your shadow self as an ISTJ is the same as Jen's husband's shadow self. So Modestus is the same type as Jen's husband ISTJ. Their shadow self is they ignore the fact that they do stuff a lot. Then they don't like the fact that things should be logically consistent, but they get it. Then they are blind to the let's see. They're blind to what's socially graceful, and they're insecure about what the single right path is. Okay, so that's your Modestus's and Chris's shadow self is a self that ignores the fact that they do stuff a lot, doesn't pay any attention to that. That countervalues the need for logical consistency. They don't like the fact that things should be logically consistent, but they're capable of doing it. They're blind to what's socially graceful or socially awkward, and they're insecure about the single right path, like choosing the single right path. So that's the shadow self of the ISTJ. It's basically all the bad stuff that necessarily comes with the good parts about being yourself. Go ahead.
What an idol would be insecure about?
What would you be insecure about? Would be choosing
an I dominant.
What would they be insecure about? Oh, they'd be insecure about knowing subjectively their own understanding of knowledge. So it'd be like they'd be insecure about taking care of themselves, feeding themselves, keeping warm enough. They'd be insecure about keeping track of their schedule and making their appointments and stuff like that. That would be the insecurity of an I dom. It would be SI insecure. Basically, it's the other, like, if let's say you start with the action function like me. I have metaphysical action in my dominant nature. It means I'm going to be insecure about physical action. If I have objective knowing, which is NI, means I'm going to be insecure about subjective knowing. If I have subjective knowing, like Kim or Chris, SI is dominant, means I'm going to be insecure about objective knowing. And if I have, for example, TE is my dominant nature, that would be my nature is extroverted thinking. I'm going to be insecure about I'm going to be insecure about extroverted feeling, the other extroverted judging function. If I'm an FI dom, I'm going to be insecure about the other introverted judging function. So whatever your nature is, you're insecure about the other form of that same thing. And whatever your tool function is, you're blind to the other form of that thing. So I'm FI blind because I'm TI tool. I'm SE insecure because I'm NE nature. Yes, he's taking notes. Good.
Well, I guess my insecurity, sometimes I feel like I am like a bad person, egotistical, because people talk, I don't understand that thing.
Well,
I don't understand ego.
But look, your reaction to this situation here is very much an example of NI insecurity. You don't like the fact that I'm telling you that this modality, this expression of this thing that I'm talking about is better than the existing models that have more broad support. I'm saying it's the single best way because it's the most logically consistent. And you don't like that this combination of I'm taking some elements from things, non-unification, and then I'm also claiming that this is the single best approach, but I'm also saying it's a single best approach because you've not presented a preferable alternative. That is an NI mess for you. You feel very insecure about dealing with that cluster of NI realities. Introverted intuition is knowing the various components of what makes something the single best truth out of a set of possible truths. And so it makes sense then that you'd react to this situation, this space, and my ideation with a lot of resistance because it's whopping away at your insecurity area. Like I would feel very insecure if we were in an SE based thing where a bunch of guys are talking about, yeah, I did like 3 jumps with my bike off that thing and it was radical or whatever. I'd feel insecure because it's like, well, I don't want to go do gnarly jumps, and if I tried, I would hurt myself, I'm sure. You know, so that's the insecurity area. Is because I'm an ideator. Physical action is something that stops ideation. Let's stop talking about what we want to do and actually do it now. Is the end of Eric's turn and the beginning of the SE Dom's turn. Namsa? Namsa means, do you know what I'm saying? I'm explaining it to you, Dalton. I'm glad to see you're a Pink Floyd fan.
So, like, 8th function is insecure?
Yeah, it's your insecurity function.
And 5th is ignoring?
Yeah.
And 6th is what?
Counter-valued. You don't like it. You actively dislike it. But you can be good at it anyway.
And 7th is blind?
Yeah.
And the shadow functions are the reverse of your 4 functions, right?
Your 4 conscious stack functions, yeah.
Thank you.
Dalton? The baby has been declared a computer nerd by Kimberly at the age of what, 1 month? How old is he?
2 months.
He's that old already?
Yeah.
It was 2 months ago you had him?
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem crazy to you?
It goes fast. It's like been the longest days, but the fastest months, if that makes sense.
You know how old my kid is. She's almost 19. It doesn't seem how long ago she was a baby.
I think the first month just seems so long.
You know what's trippy though is you assume your whole life is you got this vision for your life that begins with, childhood, and then you get married, and you have a kid, and then you sort of stop having the vision at that point. It's like, and then we have my family, and I raise my family, and everything's beautiful and rosy and shit. But the reality is, at some point, that comes to an end, and they grow up, and you're still just as much a kid as you ever were, and you go like, well, now what?
Wait,
I thought this was supposed to be the end.
when am I supposed to grow up? He is pooping.
Oh, good. I mean, I'm done. That's good, because then it doesn't sit in there and get me all angry. I've never been so excited about poop before.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, squish
Pushing it out.
That's
That's
good
right.
stuff.
Right.
Serious business.
Shadow function, your shadow self. That's the topic of today's live stream. This is not a video that's made and then uploaded, so it's going to be a little bit more haphazard than some others. But if you have anything you'd like to ask in the chat, then you can write something in the chat there, and I'll answer your question. And if you would like to join me, you can join me here in the room in appear.in/CWFP2, and you'll, as well as me, be part of this double live stream. Yes, we're live streaming as always to the live stream channel, but we're also live streaming right now to the main channel because obviously most people don't watch the raw channel. So if you are a regular viewer of Talking with Famous People and you would like to communicate with me, I'm in here a lot more these days than I have been for a while. I've decided to make a bit of a commitment to spending more time in the raw room so that I'm available for people who want to talk to me. I was told by Susie and a couple other people that people get frustrated and disappointed because they come around here and then they can't find me and they want to talk to me or something like that. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen very much, to the extent that I can make it not happen very much. I do have a fair amount of time available right now. I'm not working a whole ton, so I'm basically working at 4 days a week, maybe, depending on the week. But it's either weekends or it's late in the evening. So I try to be around during the day, at least some points during every day here in the Raw channel. If you feel like asking questions or scolding me for my wrongness or whatever else, then that's one of the things I think that makes this medium distinct from other YouTube channels is it is a hangout spot of sorts, and we don't use Google Hangouts, but it's a place where intuitives primarily can come and talk ideas without having to convert them into real world phenomena like they're expected to in most of life, because we don't usually like SE very much. Intuitives tend to not want to have to in discussion and render things actualized, especially NTPs and like INFJs, for example, or ISFJs, or types that aren't very SE heavy. He's still going. I'm going to walk away from this porch for a second. You're going to. I have been talking. I sang a song to him already. Well, the good news for Dalton, this isn't the last time you're going to hear me talk.
No, I doubt that.
It's one thing I definitely do is talk.
You done pooping? You done pooping?
Remember when you entertain the live stream audience with some banter?
Oh.
I'm gonna change it for anyways.
I'm not a good banterer.
Jen, will you entertain the live stream audience with some banter? You can sit in the main chair over there.
Can I just put the baby in
Just
front?
sit down, yeah. Just, Jen. There's no rules, Jen. She says, "Is he taping? Can I go up on the porch?" I said, "You're the archpastor's neighbor."
You're the arch neighbor.
You're the arch
This
neighbor.
is the baby boss. And he rules with an iron fist. He takes no prisoners. I wonder what his shadow self is.
I'm
Say hi.
sure,
Hello.
I'm sure that Eric has already typed in.
What's Dalton's type? He doesn't like to be put down. What does that mean? He's insecure. I'm gonna try this. Dalton doesn't like to be put down, so his shadow self is he is insecure of being alone.
I think he's either SI dom or FI dom, which means he either prioritizes his physical comfort or his emotional comfort.
Emotional, because he doesn't care who's holding him or how he's being held.
That'd
Just
be
as long
physical
as
then. That'd
just
be
as long as he's
physical.
it's physical. Okay. That's what he is.
So I'd say he's an SI dom like Kim or Chris.
SI Dom.
He could be SIFE like Kim, or he could be SITE like Chris.
What do you think?
SIFE, meaning I don't know how to put it in terms for her.
He's got FE, I think.
Say, I'm a Pink Floyd fan.
So FE would be about presentation, right?
It's about engaging with others emotionally. So basically, it's about social grace and
He-
stuff like that. If he's SIFE, it means he's looking to you smile. If
Yeah.
you smile, he's like, oh, good, you're smiling now.
Yeah.
I'm smiling back.
Okay, he does that, yes.
So he's Chris.
No,
Yes.
you.
Oh, for
Oh, he's
sure.
me.
Oh. I'll say that if Chris says that, yeah.
You sound very disappointed. Oh, I got a Kimberly?
I get along with Kimberly just fine. Come on, you could be a Kimberly. Hey,
Or
Kimberly.
like his dad, that wouldn't be important at all. Like Chris's social
No.
graces are not important to him.
No. Did you just burp? That means he likes you guys.
It means he'll have social graces, unlike his father.
Who stares at people? Yeah. Good. We have manners. We don't just stare at people uncomfortably.
You're missing this, Eric. And we're getting no feedback.
Look at he's a superstar. He's a natural. You're natural.
Your friends are unimpressed with
Yeah.
our banter.
I'm impressed by it.
He's a natural. You want to hit the keyboard?
They've all left.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. First of all, this room is not where people are watching. You can't see them in here. So it's like
Oh, like live stream.
Yeah, we're live streaming.
I
So
feel like
you
I
could
just-
participate by coming to the room, or you can just
Hopefully
watch.
he'll be more fun next time.
He's fun. You see, we three are
Are we doing
quadrumates.
comments?
I'll look see if there's any chat stuff.
Shut up, lady.
Okay, look at you, Eric.
He likes you.
Hi,
I
Dalton.
just instantly want to talk to you.
He wants to talk to you so bad.
Yeah, here's some. Oh, echo, echo, echo. We're having audio issues. Let me refresh.
Look at him, Eric.
I gotta change the poopy diaper anyways.
Okay.
You have to say something.
Can you not alienate the censors from visiting, please, Erica? Why is INFJ INFP in Socionics?
Eric, you think she looks funny.
I think he does like full hair and stuff. I think you look like Santa to him. A skinny Santa during the summertime.
Eric, look at him.
Woo. Hey, woo. Hello, dog food for dogs.
You're smiling. Look at him, Eric.
You like my singing? Capable of impressive displays of how the world should be. That would be intuitive, ethical, introvert. That would be INFJ. So I want to answer the question that somebody asked here about the J and the P in Socionics. The J and the P in Socionics just is when the reason why like INFJ, all cap letters INFJ in MBTI is INF little p in Socionics is because the dominant function is a perceiving function, quote unquote. So
Let's go do stuff.
NI is not a judging function. NI is a perceiving function. So INFJ then is actually a perceiver, not a judger. And even though ISFJ, Kimberly, is called a J in MBTI, her dominant function is SI, which is a perceiving function. So she's really a perceiver. Now, MBTI says we determine whether somebody's a perceiver or a judger by their first extroverted function. But that's not a good way to do it because, in fact, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that Kimberly is a stereotypical perceiver in the sense that she's process oriented, she's flexible, she doesn't like rigidity, and she understands things in terms of progress and not progress. And even though she's an epistemologist, she's not locked into what she knows. She's evolving. And so that perceiver quality meshes well with me. I used to be married to an ESFJ who's an actual judger because an ESFJ begins with extroverted feeling, a judging function. So that's why the PJ thing is the way it is in Socionics. Socionics is correct in that regard, and ISFJ is really a perceiver, if you call SI a perceiving function. And it's true that, so the introverts are all backwards on MBTI. If you're an INFP, you're really a judger. If you're an INFJ, you're really a perceiver. So that's why it's that way. Hopefully that clears it up. I like to use, when I'm talking about Socionics, I use Socionics names. I'll say, I'm an ILE, an intuitive logical extrovert. Or an INTP would be a LII, a logical intuitive introvert. And if you use those things, it's a good, quick way to do it. Yeah, another good, quick way to talk about type is to simply talk about the first two functions. So I'm NETI, and INTP is TINE. INFJ is NIFE. ISFJ is SIFE. The first two functions, that is the type. The other thing is all deducible from those two. You don't need to know anything else to determine all the functions of a person if you know the first two. Because the first one tells you the fourth, the second one tells you the third, and the first four tell you the shadow functions. So it's like that. One thing I want to talk about, and this isn't really covered in well, it's sort of related to the topic that's listed, is the way that Socionics is different than MBTI and how people talk about that. Some people will say things like, well, in MBTI I'm this, but in Socionics I'm that. That does not mean anything. That's complete nonsense. And INTP is an LII. They're the same thing. Now, it's true that Socionics may describe certain of those functions as behaving a little differently than MBTI describes those functions, but they're still describing the same configuration. They're simply just saying it means slightly different things. If you believe yourself to have a given stack in MBTI, you have the same stack in Socionics. It's a good reason to ignore the blocks thing. The blocks thing is nonsense. There's no reason to order the functions like that. Jung got it right in the first place with his first four conscious, second four unconscious. Are the second four actually fully unconscious? No, they're not actually fully unconscious. The most unconscious ones are 5 and 7. Ignoring's largely unconscious, but you can get a feel for it by a negative space, so to speak. 7 is almost entirely unconscious because you're blind to it. Hi, Jiggles. But the 6th function is certainly not unconscious, but it is countervalued. And the 8th function is not unconscious, but it's not something you feel confident about. So, I mean, the point is, I guess, that Kimberly, what are you doing?
Distracting you.
The freaking, god damn it. Yes, tax and stuff. So, okay, so if you think you're LI and Socionics, then you also think you're INTP and MBTI. You may prefer a Socionics type description, but you're still not getting it if you think you can be different in the two models. It's like this, okay? Imagine a population of animals. There are 16 different species of animals. Horses, giraffe, elephant, bamboo, whatever, okay? Now, inside of each of those animals is a two-colored heart. It's either blue or yellow, yellow and blue, red and brown, whatever, okay? There are 16 different pairs of colors. The thing is, we naturally want to put people together according to what they appear to be. These are all horses, so put them in a group. These are all baboons, so put them in a group. But what we're really trying to group together are the heart colors. Now, it just so happens that most of the horses are blue and yellow in their heart, okay? But some of the baboons are blue and yellow, and some of the other things are blue and yellow. Now, most of the baboons are red and brown. So when we're talking about type, if we're focusing on the type before the functions, we're focusing on the fact that, yeah, but it looks like a horse. But that's, no matter how much it looks like a horse, that doesn't tell us it's necessarily blue and yellow inside. And that's what we're actually trying to find out about. Are you blue and yellow? Not whether you're a horse. We do understand that most of the horses are blue and yellow. We do understand that most of the things that are blue and yellow are horses. But we also understand the correlation is not perfect. That, in fact, the population is split into 16 groups, but it's based on the inside color that we can't see, not on the species. And the species just happens to correlate reasonably well with the inside color. So when we think about it like that, we have a much better way of understanding how Socionics and MBTI are different. Socionics and MBTI are two different ways of trying to figure out what colors are inside. MBTI more or less says, well, if you look like a horse, you're blue and yellow, because most of the horses are blue and yellow. And if you're trying to figure out why, even though you are just like the horses in terms of their horse qualities, you are more like the baboons in some ways, in some critically important ways. Well, it's because most of the baboons are blue and yellow, and most of the horses are not. And really, the qualities, again, that we're trying to determine are the ways in which the inside parts that we can't see, the genotype of personality, is reflective of the set that you're a part of, rather than the phenotype determining the set. I don't know why one would do that.
You!
So who did that? A person who just joined? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't do that, please. I
No,
prefer not to lock
he left.
Yeah, I know he did. I'm telling the general audience. That's fucking super gay. Anyway, yeah, I don't. The thing about like general trolly stuff like that is, it's so unimaginative that it annoys me. If you're gonna troll in some capacity, it better be entertaining and creative, or else you're just wasting everybody's time and being a self-indulgent cuck. So, I don't like that shit. It's stupid. The reason I don't like it is because it's stupid, not because it's interfering with my agenda here. I'm very flexible, right? You want to come in and change the topic and start talking about something else? I don't give a fuck. That's fine. But be interesting. It's just like the lowest hanging possible fruit in terms of what one might do to disrupt the general pattern of things. Disruption is an art form. You do it clumsily like that, you're just a fucking retard. I gotta go poop. I'm gonna turn off the video for a second. I still want to continue to live stream. Why, Eric? Why do you want to continue to live stream? Well, because that's what I'm doing right now for a little while. I feel like the live stream should stretch on for like an hour or so. It feels that way.
I still making a video.
Hmm?
Making a video.
Yeah, we're still making a video. I'm gonna poop while we're making a video. Now, don't worry, everybody. I've turned off the camera. You don't have to watch me poop. And I'm going to poop very quietly, so you're not going to hear it. I won the world championship in quiet pooping. I don't know if you are aware that championship exists, but it does. And I'm the world champion.
Well, if you poop in the water, it's kind of making a sound. It depends in which place you poop.
No, because, yeah, my poop is so long, it'll stretch from my butthole all the way down to the water, so there won't be any splash.
Oh, great.
That's pretty good, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so regarding the shadow functions and the shadow self, as I say, it's, I think, very useful to understand oneself in the negative terms of one's type, because it helps to understand how an analysis of cognitive functions and type and typology and all that other stuff that is meaningful is going to be one that understands your configuration as an imbalance of nature that infers necessarily an imbalance of weakness that corresponds. Now, these things, as I said, are your reflexive defaults. It doesn't mean you're trapped by them. The more you understand about what your reflexive defaults are, either positive and negative, the less you are controlled by them and the less you're constrained by them. So, a message I want to repeat that I said earlier in this live stream is that to the extent that you feel as though the analysis of type or typology or cognitive functions is reductive of the individual. In other words, individuals are complex, unique, whole human beings. You can't really type them and put them into groups and blah, blah, blah. To the extent that that's true, it's more true of those who know most about cognitive functions and typology. And I have an example from last night of a gentleman who was an ESTJ and who knew nothing of cognitive functions or type, who came in pure, so to speak, unimpacted by metacognition. He hadn't done any thinking about how he thought or how he was or how he wanted to display or anything like that. He was running on autopilot. And what I saw was a reflexive display of, advocacy of, embrace of, affirmation of the value sets that were his default reflexes, and a complete absence of an understanding that that's what they were, that they weren't something that was necessarily so and preferable because it's obviously that way, because it's always been that way. It was that. It wasn't any sort of an expression of actual choice making. If you want to advocate for some values, like I might advocate for what you call TI values, for consistency over utility, at least I'm able to say to myself, Eric, remember that this is your default bias, that you're inclined to prefer consistency over utility as a default. And so to the extent that you want to make sure you're engaging in free choice and free will and an optimal decision-making process, you should probably take that into account and remember to afford more legitimacy to utility than you're naturally reflexively going to. Then that allows me to make choices that are less comfortable for me, but maybe wiser. And it's something that somebody who's operating purely on autopilot is much less capable of doing. So there is a liberating, enabling quality to metacognition. That is to say, thinking about how you are, how you think, what your reflexive manners of attention are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you're actually insecure about. People sometimes have a hard time, it's a long journey, getting themselves to be honest about what they're actually insecure about. We tend to want to spend so much time defending what we're insecure about that we don't spend time being honest with ourselves about it so that we could do something about it. Go ahead, Modestus.
No, I just said I know why I'm insecure, I guess. If that's the insecurity, you can call it.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing, it's nice to know also that everybody has an insecurity function. It's not like anybody gets to not be insecure about one of the aspects of attention. Everybody has that because it's naturally part of the configuration. So, you know, I find my SE insecurity, I think, that's a fucking annoying thing to be insecure about. It's, you know, playing sports and fucking chicks and all that man stuff, you know, it makes you kind of like,
Oh, that's great.
it makes you kind of defensive. It makes me kind of defensive. But every insecurity function has its own set of challenges, and it depends on the environment in which you're in as to whether you're having to operate by your insecurity function a lot or a little. This environment is specially designed to make me not have to use my insecurity function at all.
Well, it seems to me that my insecurity is when I am with authority, with authoritative people, because I feel that information which I say could go to the other, no, I'm insecure about my living, because I'm paranoid, because I feel like the information could float.
Right, you're insecure about the single right path, the declaration of one thing as being a single right path, and how one ascertains that. And that's perfectly consistent with an SI dom. Kimberly's insecure and about the same sort of things, but it doesn't really show up in our relationship at all because we don't have a lot of NI ground that we have to walk on. So that's nice. My insecurity function shows up a lot more in our relationship than hers. Okay, well, that was a serious unloading of freight there. I was encumbered by about, I'd say, 8 to 12 pounds of feces in my butt. So, you know, I feel considerably lighter and more capable of existence. Got some toast here now as well.
I just can't believe you enjoyed because you smoked that much. Your taste buds should be kind of.
Well, why do you think that? Are your taste buds shot?
Well, because of smoking. It doesn't feel so much when you smoke. It's kind of not sensitive.
Well, guess who that is?
You.
Mm-hmm. That's me 6 months ago.
May I ask you something?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In school, were you more friends with SE people or the opposite of them? You know what I mean?
The opposite.
What?
SE people and I always had problems. I mean, the thing about it is, SE DOMs don't like any DOMs, and any DOMs don't like SE DOMs. And the reason is because we want to discuss the ideas, and they want to stop discussing the ideas.
Yes. I have a ESFP friend, and he hates my ENFP friend.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact they share the extroverted thinking and introverted feeling axis.
Right. Well, and I hate ESTPs.
Yes, and it's also despite the fact that your second and third function are the same. It's curious.
Because I view them as using those functions in the cause of evil.
And my friend, he always says that this ENFP friend is just messing around. He's not doing anything. He's just talking and causing everybody to think.
Yeah.
Empty
You know,
talk,
that's what
talk,
Yeah.
just a waste of goddamn time. Just talk. Will you stop moving your mouth for a bit and actually pull your head out of your ass and do something?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
stand around and gaze at your navel the whole time? Talk is cheap. Let's do shit. I hate
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
That's the enemy right there. No, your insistence that we take action right now, despite the fact that you're a fucking moron and have terrible ideas, that's the problem. So sit down and shut the fuck up, ESTP. You're not smart enough to be in the room.
Oh.
They have a different philosophy.
But you already know what to do.
Look. If it's as if you were trying to employ an ENTP by using their, as if they've had dominant FI. It's like, yeah, your job is to make personal opinions and empathy. What's that? It's the same when you do that in ESTP. I mean, yeah, hello, ENTPs. From this point on, all you will do is memorize facts without understanding them. Yeah, that will be your job now. Brilliant. And that's the same way when you do it to an ESTP. The ESTP just doesn't click for him. It's not his philosophy of life, right?
No, I know. I'm not trying to delegitimize them. I'm explaining how the fact that I have an 8th slot SE means this is my antipathy towards ESTPs reflexively. Metacognition allows me to recognize the importance of SE in the world and the need for following through and the need for physical action. When I talk about ESTPs a lot, I tend to ham it up a bit because it's nice to have a foil. You know, it's nice to have an enemy to talk shit about. But it makes for good content.
But you can break down what ESTP said. You can see and break down their words. That's
Yeah.
what they say.
Right, but look, the thing is, they are among the best at sticking a stick into the machinery. Whatever it is you're doing, ideationally, ESTPs are remarkably good at just derailing it by saying something like, "Oh yeah, well you're fat," and you go like, "But," and then like the audience laughs, and you go, "But I was just making a bunch of good ideas here," and you go, "Ah." So they're
But your ideas
a tough opponent.
means that your ideas gets nothing because you're a bad human being. Well, it's kind of
Who's saying that? I'm not saying
Me.
that.
I'm
I mean-
saying that.
I mean, it's just basic. It's like intuitors versus sensors. Like dominant sensors are like, holy shit, I've just made an insight. Let me do something about it. And like intuitors are like, holy shit, I've made an observation. Let me think about it. So it's like two different poles of thinking.
But it's not
Okay.
just sensors, it's extroverted sensors. Introverted sensors are a lot more like intuitives because they're perceivers. And like that's why Modestus, an introverted sensor ISTJ, is still here ideating, even though it's TEFI. It's why Kimberly finds this stuff interesting, even though she's SIFE. She's a sensor, but she's an epistemologist, first of all. SI is a very different kind of sensing than SE. It's the SE DOMs that run afoul of the intuitives. It's not the SI DOMs.
Fair point.
Yeah, so it's like when we talk about sensors and intuitives, all of Alpha Quadra gets along pretty well with what is generally considered an intuitive type of interaction. So I'm sitting here with Jen and Kimberly. Jen and Kimberly and I could probably sit down and have good conversations for quite some time and get along well. Why? We're all part of Alpha Quadra, ESFJ, ISFJ, ENTP. throw an INTP in the mix, we got ourselves a quadruple. But the thing is, we're gonna get along well, and we're gonna be fine with chatting about ideas and stuff as long as it doesn't get too hyper intellectual. With your SFJs, is gonna be fine because they're more intuitive seeming than, say, even ENTJ seems more like a sensor in terms of our respective interests than does ISFJ. ISFJ feels more intuitive to me than ENTJ because the TE renders shit much more SE framed than FE does. SI and FE, or FE and SI, it's very consistent with the way that the NTPs ideate, except instead of about dry intellectual stuff, it's more about relationships. But it's the same kind of ideation. So that's obviously not have much to do with the shadow function and shadow self thing. But I do think it's interesting if you compare your shadow self, you put it up against your partner's shadow self, you could possibly see some areas where conflict would arise. So my shadow self being someone who ignores the right course, who doesn't like thinking about how to get there efficiently, who is blind to what he personally wants, and is insecure about doing anything. That's my shadow self. Paired up with Kimberly's shadow self, who ignores her doing of things, who dislikes having to consider what she personally likes and doesn't like, who's blind to how to get it efficiently, and is insecure about the single right course. If you line those things up next to each other, you'll see that the reason why duality, for example, works is, well, I'm ignoring what she's insecure about, and she's ignoring what I'm insecure about. And I'm countervaluing what she's blind to, and she's countervaluing what I'm blind to. And I'm blind to what she countervalues, and she's blind to what I countervalue. And I'm insecure about what she ignores, and she's insecure about what I ignore. So our various bad qualities they excuse or assist with the other party's various bad qualities in a way that renders our shadow selves more benign. If you have a bad relationship, like one that's not a duality, then if you have ESFJ, for example, with Candace, I ignored what she was blind to, and I countervalued what she was insecure about, and I was blind to what she ignored. That's not as it's close. It's close to what you want, but it's not right, because I shouldn't be blind to what you ignore. I should be blind to what you countervalue, so that if you countervalue it, you're going to sometimes do it well, sometimes do it badly, blah, blah, blah. I should be unable to see how well or badly you're doing it because I'm blind to it, because then I won't ever judge you on it, and you can use it effectively without ever having to run afoul of me busting your chops about it. If it's the other way around, if it's like you're countervaluing what they're insecure about, then you're constantly going, okay, well, don't worry about it. It's cool. I don't really value that anyway. It's okay that you're insecure about it. It's better for them to ignore your insecurity and be like, I don't understand what you're insecure about. Because then that legitimacy makes your insecurity go away. You're like, you really don't understand what I'm insecure about. It's really hard for me to continue to be insecure about something if you don't get why I'm insecure. Not you're saying that, but you genuinely don't get it.
And what about like not between just between the shadow functions, but what about like if I'm blind to something that someone actually values, or
Right.
like the conflict types? How does
Right.
it work? Like this mechanism?
Well, here's an example of a bad relationship. You get your two SI DOMs together. You get ISFJ and ISTJ. That was Kimberly's first marriage. And what happens in that situation is the ISTJ goes, here, I'm going to use my tool function, extroverted thinking, to do nice things for you and show you I care about you and make this relationship work. I'm going to use some extroverted thinking. She's blind to it. She doesn't understand that he's doing anything nice at all. She doesn't get what he's trying to do at all. Simultaneously, she's like, don't worry, I'll save the relationship. I'm going to put a lot of FB into this because that's my tool function. He's blind to it. It has no impact on him. So they're both trying to help. Neither person thinks the other party is doing anything at all. It's like, oh my God, I'm doing all the work around here and you're doing nothing. And the other party's like, no, I'm doing all the work around here and you're doing nothing. Because they're both blind to each other's tool function. I think that's the worst possible relationship, if you're blind to each other's tool functions.
And the one party with ISFJ may have the third function, so she wants to use iterative thinking, and ISTJ countervalues that.
Right.
Right? Or,
She wants to be, she's aspirational, like, look, I did a good job in introverted thinking. And ISTJ goes, well, that doesn't matter. That's just stupid anyway.
yeah. I have the same problem. I believe I'm an INFJ, and I have the same problem with my INTJ friend.
INTJ?
He doesn't get my FE, and he doesn't care about my TI.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't get what you do well, and he doesn't care about what you want to do well.
Yes.
That's very frustrating for sure. My first relationship, I believe I was with an INFP who's a supervisor type, and that's there when your dominant nature is your blind spot, then it's not so combative because you're not equals. It's like I just feel like, oh, you're always judging me and I'm always judging you, but you kind of have an advantage because you ignore. I mean, you're like FI Dom, they have insecurity on TI, but an NE Dom with TI afterwards is blind to their nature and is good at what they're insecure about, but it doesn't matter. It's still end up being your supervisor, and you can just feel it. You feel it all the time, like they once again you hurt their feelings. Oh, for Christ's fucking sake, you cannot tell me I hurt your feelings again. But then later on you go like, yeah, but I guess they're right. I shouldn't have said that. And you go, I'm sorry I said that to you. But you're always getting in trouble. So that's why you don't want that one. But you don't want to be with like ENTP doesn't want to be with INFP. It's not a good match. I mean, the only good match I think for ENTP is ISFJ. It's the only perfect match. ESFJ is the closest second.
INTP?
INTP would be a good relationship. INFJ would also be good. I think ESFJ, INTP, or INFJ can all have long, successful, almost good relationships. Like almost right relationships. But I fundamentally believe that for ENTPs anyway, if you want to be happy long term, and you want to know what true happiness is, and you want to actually understand what love means instead of just talking about it as though you understood what it meant, then you have to get an ISFJ. That's my belief, but I mean, other people may disagree with that. For you, then INFJ, I guess you'd have to get an ESTP girl. I wouldn't want one, but I don't deny that different people have different tastes.
And would you like advise me? Like, I don't know how to spot them. Like, how would that girl behave?
Well, she's
Loud. No. I mean, imagine somebody with enormous social skills but enormous insecurity at once, which is very active and then sensory. You're like, oh shit, is that an ESFJ? No, because they're self-aware and they're not actually cunts.
I can't think of it.
Yes, no.
But hey, you're right though. What you just said is brilliant. Say that again about it's somebody who's both very confident and insecure at the same time, or whatever.
Yes.
Say that again. Yeah. Is
Hey,
that
I already forgot it. That's why we have
the ESTPs. It's something like that. It was something basically that says you can tell an ESTP because they're both very self-assured and very insecure at the same time. But you might mistake them for an ENTP who's also that way.
But the ESTP is more sensory and is likely going to run around and stuff.
But the word insecure overlaps with the 8th function.
Well, I would say this about the INFJ ESTP relationship. Probably the INFJ doesn't spot the ESTP and make shit happen like the INFJ wants to, step by step, very cautiously with extra careful FE and shit like that. Probably the INFJ is someplace and the ESTP chick comes up and pulls them up and says, let's dance right now. And that's how it starts or something.
So I should just wait.
You kind of just have to wait and say, like, I'm available for ESTP chicks to come attack.
Right.
I love ESPs actually. They make me kind of feel secure. So,
ESTP, say again?
ESTPs makes me feel secure.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. The INFJs make me feel secure.
For INTJs, now that I think of it.
Well, ESTPs always
you need to refresh, Modestus. Your audio is bad. You need to refresh.
Wait, how will it apply for INTJs in the form of INTJ x ESFP?
Well,
INTJ ESFP. Well, I mean,
in theory, it should work, but I don't see it working, to be honest.
You are an ESFP?
Well,
no,
you got a metaphysical knowledge with physical action mixed. So if they're coordinated with each other, I can see it working. If the ESFP is being directed by the INTJ in terms of the ESFP is looking to the INTJ to understand what kind of craziness to make happen, then it could work. But the INTJ would have to provide a lot of NI for that ESFP, who I think is the most desperately in need of NI of all the types.
Can you hear me now?
So
yes, I can hear you.
So like direction in life, is that it?
Well, I mean, I think ESFPs are the kind of people who, like, they're 19, they get pregnant, they have a kid, they decide they don't really like being a mother and kill their kid. That's ESFPs, right? They are really, really bad at NI. They don't get the fact that that's not the right way to go, and they're not good at NE either because it's insecure, so they can't think of other possibilities. All I can think is, well, I guess I'll have to kill the kid. I can't think of any other possibility because I'm insecure with my NE, and I'm so seeking somebody else to tell me, no, don't kill your child, that I'm just a fucking crazy ESFP. ESFPs are also liars, typically. So
isn't it ESTP that tells always what they do? I do this. They always.
Well, I mean, ESTP,
They are blind to FI, so they cannot know what they want to do.
right? ESFP is much more like a wild card because they are insecure about coming up with possibilities. They seek somebody else to tell them the right course of action, which means they're susceptible to manipulation. And their 6-slot FE with first slot SE makes them liars. So they're countervaluing FE. They're not very good at it, and yet they feel like they have to do something to do FE, and they end up just telling lies in order to clumsily attempt to manage FE. That's the problem with ESFPs. But not all ESFPs are like that, obviously. Some of them manifest much more healthily than others. What you looking for, Kevin?
Well, the people that make me feel secure are the ones that say what they do.
I mean, that makes sense. If you're an SI Dom, what's going to make you feel secure is an SE Dom. Just like what makes me feel secure is an NI Dom. It's because the ignoring part of yourself, the thing you assume will take care of itself. When somebody else steps up and says, I'll make sure that part that's supposed to take care of itself takes care of itself for you just by being here, then that person's going to make you feel secure. That's why INFJs make me feel most secure. INTJs also make me feel secure, but INFJs more so because it's both, they have the ignored part of my nature, NI, as their dominant nature, and we share the same 2 3s. So, that makes INFJ my most comforting person, and also the type that is most likely to successfully bamboozle me if I'm going to get bamboozled. In other words, if I'm going to trust anybody too much, I'm going to trust an INFJ too much.
Well, in Socionics, it's the same intellect. They have very similar. In Socionics, I don't know how that relationship, but the idea is the same kind of intellect. To me, it would be ESFPs. ISTJ, ESFP, INFJ, ENTP.
Oh, right.
ISFJ,
Right, it is.
yes.
Yeah, okay. ESFP, yeah. Yeah, you'd find ESFP comforting because they demonstrate the kind of ability to embrace the moment and get out of the TE planning thing. See, TE is sequential. It wants things to proceed in a certain order, and it thinks that things are best understood when they're best predictable. So, as a consequence, what you're looking for is validation that the unpredictability is okay, and that's what an ESFP would provide for you.
I don't like though that Steve smokes joints. That guy who is INFJ and you said he is ESFP. He said he smokes joints.
Okay, well, smoking joints doesn't make you ESFP.
Oh, yeah. Just the thing to point out.
Wow, bruh. Smoking joints. Was that person an ENTP? Just for theory. Was that person an ENTP, or what was the type of the person?
Who, Modestus?
No, the person who said that smoking joints will make you.
Eric said he is ESFP, but he says he is INFJ.
No,
What?
Modestus is an ISTJ. The guy you're asking about is an ISTJ, I think. I haven't actually formally typed him or anything, but that's my gut. And he's trying to say that because if anybody does any drugs, then they're some sort of bad thing or something. I don't know what the fuck he's trying to get at.
I think wait, maybe he's saying doing drugs makes you an ESFP.
Yeah, I
Like,
think that's what he's saying.
ESFP is bad, so correlation.
Maybe it makes you more prone to enjoy the moment. So that would
Depends on
mean
what drugs. I mean, when you take
drugs.
alcohol, you're just
Maybe
less responsive.
if you are interested in the moment, then drugs can be interesting for you, you know, because
I
it's
mean,
like indulging.
if you were to take shrooms, you will not be more in the moment.
I mean, I don't feel that there's any burden on me to justify my drug use. I think the burden is on him to justify his inherently evil having an opinion about my drug use or anybody else's, right? It's a matter of autonomy. I'm doing drugs for whatever reason I want, and you should have no opinion about it.
Oh,
Right. I'm even doing them legally. But even if I weren't, it wouldn't make any difference because the actual crimes that get committed related to drugs are crimes of are crimes by those committed by people who justify use of force by the fact that you're taking drugs. Those are the real crimes. Those are the real transgressions. So, fuck no, I'm not going to buy into his framework and defend drugs for any reason other than the only way I'm going to defend drugs is attacking his having an opinion about my drug use. Because fuck you if you think that your perspective on what I ought to do should be prioritized over my own will regarding my own body and mind.
I mean, you are, if drugs are supposed to hurt you, you are hurting yourself, not the person. I mean, they might be fighting the temptation to take them.
Why?
Because when they see an environment full of drug users, it kind of, persuades them into doing so. And if they held a strong opinion against it, it will be harder than if they just smack down all the drug users. So they're kind of just selfish pieces of shit. They don't want to save your life.
I mean, the thing is this. There is a drug that I don't do. I won't do alcohol. Alcohol, but it doesn't mean I think it's a bad drug. It means I think I can't handle it. The reason I don't drink alcohol is because I can't handle alcohol. That's a good reason not to drink alcohol.
yeah. I also can handle it.
In contrast, the reason he doesn't smoke marijuana is because he thinks marijuana is bad. As though it can have a status outside of an individual's experience of it. That's the problem. And to think that you can ascribe such a status and thereby justify violence against people, well, that makes you a scumbag. True words, friends. True words from Eric. Not about shadow functions, but true nevertheless. Back to the shadow function thing. This live stream will be probably winding up here. Let's see how long it's been going on. An hour, 17 minutes. Pretty soon. Yeah, next couple of them, yes. And I just want to say that if there's one takeaway from this whole video, it's one I repeated a couple times, and I'll repeat it as the ending conclusion. That understanding cognitive functions, understanding type, understanding typology, these things allow you to be less enslaved by your type. That when you begin and you know nothing about how one attends to things, what kind of cognition one might engage in, what alternatives there are to your own reflexes, when you don't know any of that, you display the most stereotypical version of your type that you can possibly display. It is by understanding that different ways of cognating about things exist, understanding what those are, understanding your relationship to those different ways of paying attention and your own habits of paying attention. It's by doing that that you enable yourself to have actual free will and say, I'm not going to behave as I reflexively naturally do. I'm going to be mindful and instead choose this less comfortable manner of attention that's more appropriate to this context. So some manners of attention are most appropriate to some contexts. This environment right here is super appropriate to my preferred manners of attention, extroverted intuition, and introverted thinking. But there are other contexts in which I need to prioritize somebody else's preferred manner of attention, and this is most obvious for me when I need to listen to other people giving me FE advice. Eric, here's how to be more socially graceful. You need to not say this kind of stuff because it makes people mad or whatever. Watch your tone, that kind of stuff. Those kind of pieces of advice are saying to me, Eric, use a different manner of attention than your preferred manner of attention in this context, because this context is one that is more well suited to a manner of attention that's less comfortable for you. Being aware of that reality means that I can choose to take the less comfortable manner of attention because it's a better choice contextually. And if I don't understand how manners of attention work, I cannot make that choice. An example of this sort of thing is when Kimberly taught me the word variegated the other day. We were talking about leaves of different colors. If you have basically a two-tone leaf that's got like two different colors of stripes on it, it's a variegated version of that species. And if it's just a single color or just kind of a mush of colors, then it's a non-variegated version of that species. So a lot of different plants will have variegated and non-variegated types of that species. Before I knew that word meant that, I did not mentally make a distinction between the fact that, well, this is the same plant as that, except this one has two different colors, so it's a different variety of it or something. I just didn't think about it. Now that I have a precise taxonomical term to use, variegated, I will note when a plant species is variegated, and I will note when I see a non-variegated version of it, and I'll say, oh, that species comes in variegated varieties. It's something that was enabled and, in fact, made necessarily so because I learned one word. That whole shit just happened because I learned one word. Do not underestimate the power of understanding taxonomical lexicons. That is to say, when you learn a set of languages that are designed to help you organize data sets into useful components or nodes and things that can relate to each other via mechanics, then all of a sudden you're enabled to interact with an existentiality that includes that cognitive landscape. And you're not only enabled to, you necessarily will. I find it impossible to engage with other people without making notations regarding their manner of attention they're displaying and stuff now. It's not because I'm trying to do it, I can't not know what I know now.
And it makes you more tolerating.
What Kimberly just said is how I want to end it. She said it means that you learn to be accountable and you learn to be forgiving. And I ascribe both those values very highly. So I think it's a good spot to end the live stream and as a good advocacy in favor of typology and stuff. Thanks for watching Talk with Fan People. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese and rock and roll.